So we've talked a lot about SAR-bisPSMA being your lead programs, both on the diagnostic and the therapeutic side, but obviously you have other programs in the clinic. You've also recently announced, a keen interest, in breast cancer. We know breast cancer is a huge market akin to prostate cancer. Really keen, I guess, to understand breast cancer. What's your next steps? Which products? How are you going to approach that market in a way that, I guess, differentiates akin to what you've done in prostate cancer?
Yeah, so we see radiopharm as really opening opportunities in solid tumors.
Mm-hmm.
And even though there's opportunities in other tumors, but solid tumors seem to bode well. And the big areas, prostate cancer is a big area, breast cancer is a big area, lung cancer is a massive area. But before we take on lung, there's some immediate opportunities for us to shift out of prostate. Now, SAR-bisPSMA is a cracking asset. That's our main asset in prostate. Yes, we're looking at Bombesin at this point in time in prostate, but SAR-bisPSMA as a diagnostic is just so different to the others. So when we're looking PSMA negative, maybe it's not SAR-bisPSMA negative. And then the therapy option there. But breast cancer represents an opportunity that we've already done some trials there. With Bombesin, obviously, with the expression of that target, gastrin-releasing peptide receptor in breast cancer. But we were playing around in the lab because we like to do that. And this is the HER2 targeting. And we see HER2 targeting as really exciting. We're on that preclinical data, the amount of antibody you get into the lesion is phenomenal. And radiopharm has some specific advantages over ADCs. In the space. And we want to, in prostate, we don't like antibodies. In breast, it's a little bit different because there is a target like that with such substantial uptake.
Yeah.
And it's and even when we're chatting to the KOLs, really smart way to start addressing and opening up that market and to broaden our application. So copper 64 and 67 can be brought into a whole bunch of indications, but breast cancer was easy picking because of the assets we have.
Mm-hmm.
Bringing HER2 in and bridging it with Bombesin, potentially with SAR-bisPSMA, right, in triple negative is a potential option, and we'll see what the expression looks like there.
Yep.
And potentially SARTATE in that market, given some of the data that came out of RAISE. Okay, so all of those assets are applicable to breast cancer. And we have a lot of, and particularly in Australia, breast cancer clinicians looking for new things, whether it's diagnostic or therapy, to really overcome some of the issues. Obviously, breast cancer is a lot more complex than prostate, and there's a lot more.
Many different subtypes and genetic influences.
Yep. So there might be opportunities to have real benefit in, well, first HER2 positive, and then GRPR in a particular group of breast cancer, which we've already done some work on, we've already published on, and then looking at these other assets. I'm not a big fan of putting alphas into women, and that's what RAISE has done to date and had some success. But with a target that has some offsite targeting, we were rather a beta, and so SARTATE represents a great opportunity there.
So if we think about clinical programs you have ongoing, and you mentioned those assets like Bombesin and SARTATE, you have 2 phase 2s on the diagnostic side that are fully recruited. The patients are all in. One, on the prostate cancer side, PSMA negative or low, with SABRE. And then with neuroendocrine tumors, the DISCO study. So I think those phase 2s are still sitting there. When do we expect, data from those? But then also, I guess, what's next steps for those assets? Because, everyone's focused over on SAR-bisPSMA, which is the right thing. But I guess it's keen to understand a little bit more about those two and next steps.
So our priority is early revenues. And now we're seeing this moving with these assets, moving into phase 3 clinical trials, reducing that amount of time to revenues. And that doesn't mean that we've changed our strategy at all, but this is an ability to generate revenues early. It drives value, right? Particularly in Australia. And SARTATE, and we stopped the DISCO trial early due to overwhelming evidence. Now, it's the second time we've done a clinical trial in that asset and shown the difference between the competing product, NetSpot. And that market is a few $100 million US. So we're going to read out, it's quite soon, on DISCO, and then that will formulate our plan. We'll look at the data. We don't have access to the data except seeing some original work, but now it has to all come together. It's run by a CRO, and we wait for the CRO to present that data. Okay. And when that comes out, that will formulate what a phase 3 will look like. Now, if we look at it, one of the competing products in that space, DetectNet, was a very small trial, 70 patients. And we would look to do that. We would look to run phase 3 and get that product to market. If it was, if all the data stacks up and everything, a simple scientist,
it's compelling.
Let's get the data to sort itself out, and let's look at that market opportunity. And we know where we sit there. We've already done some head-to-head trials with the competitor. When it comes to Bombesin, let's see what that data looks like. Let's see. We had obviously BOP publish. 40-odd% of patients that were PSMA negative were able to detect their disease. The question for us on that, though, is we didn't compare it with SAR-bisPSMA. We compared it to products that fail sensitivity.
Yeah, so you really should be putting it up against your product.
Exactly. The question for us is, are we best off just focusing on SAR-bisPSMA? Well, firstly, that's an easy answer. Is that yes, it
separately,
is.
Yeah.
Right? But does Bombesin add any value to SAR-bisPSMA? Is there some targets that express the gastrin-releasing peptide receptor that don't express PSMA, and we get some therapeutic benefit, clinical benefit out of detecting those lesions? Or are they slower growing or some other thing, and is there a benefit? So let's get the data out. Let's see if it's better or presents some better opportunity. Let's measure that market size and see then commercially, should be rushing that into a phase 3? Because we know SAR-bisPSMA, yes. We know SARTATE in NETs, yes. We've already done the head-to-heads. And then Bombesin, we just have to do some homework to see whether that information is going to change the clinical outcome for patients.
Yeah, okay.
But Bombesin, as we said, in breast cancer, very great.
It's a multi-indication
great opportunity.
target.
We'll continue to progress that opportunity. Louise Emmett has, always, and she's come out and spoken recently, we need to go back in breast here, Alan. We need to focus on breast cancer with Bombesin. And the answer always to Louise is yes. Let's look at that.